IVs confusing you in Pokemon Go? You have different Pokemon with different IV sets and you don't know which one to invest in? Well, today I'm going to answer all your questions about that. Let's get right into it. So first thing to talk about is we need to understand IVs. Once you reach level 5 in Pokemon Go, you'll be able to come into any Pokemon here, click Appraise, and see the Pokemon's IVs, which are the individual values of the Pokemon, and each Pokemon is going to have a unique set of IVs. Obviously, two Pokemon can have the same IVs, but every Pokemon you catch will most likely have different ones. That's why they're called individual values. IVs are out of 15. You have 15 points for attack, 15 points for defense, 15 points for HP. This is a 14-3-2 Pokemon, for example. 14 attack, 3 defense, 2 HP. Pretty much how IVs work is there is a formula, which I will put up on screen, in which they will be added to the base stats of the Pokemon, and that's how you're going to see how strong the Pokemon is. If it has a high base attack stat and 15 points in attack, it's going to have a much higher attack than the same Pokemon with the same base stats, but like 0 attack IVs. However, not all IVs contribute the same towards CP. Defense and HP IVs will contribute, let's just say, a ×1 multiplier to the CP. Meanwhile, attack IVs will contribute a ×2 multiplier, meaning that they will lead to a lot higher of a CP Pokemon if that Pokemon has a higher attack IV. For example, a Pokemon from a single species, for example, let's say a Skunky with 15 attack stats, not this one, but 15 attack stats, 0 defense, 0 HP stats, might have the exact same CP at the exact same level as a Skunky with 0 attack and 15 defense and 15 HP, because the attack IVs are going to contribute a lot towards a higher CP number. Not sure why Niantic did it this way, but it just kind of is that way. This is very important to know for a future strategy we're going to use, but that's pretty much generally how IVs work. Okay, let's move into what IV sets are the best. So first, let's talk about raid attacking IVs, Pokemon that you're going to be powering up to use to take down raid bosses. Like all of these Pokemon I have powered up here. Now, clearly self-explanatory, you're going to want just the best IVs across the board for these Pokemon. For example, I have this Mewtwo here. It's going to have perfect IVs, which it has 15 attack, 15 defense, and 15 HP. Great Mewtwo, this is what we want to be using for raids. In raids though, I will say we do want to give a little bit of weight towards the attack IVs, because the more damage you're doing in the raids, the faster the raid boss is going down, the less potions you have to use, etc., less time wasted. So overall, when you are actually looking for a raid attacking Pokemon, the main stat you want to be looking at is that 15 attack, and make sure you have that 15 attack. For example, on this Dragonite, I don't care too much that its HP is 14. This Mamoswine as well, I've powered this Mamoswine up even if it has 9 HP stats, because the attack stat is the most important one. It's also important to know that generally in raids, the raid boss does so much damage, so whether you have the extra defense or HP stats usually doesn't really make a difference. It can in certain scenarios, but you're going to be taking so much damage, you're probably going to be getting 1 shot or 2 shot, and having a couple extra IV points in defense and HP, probably not changing too much, but having those extra attack IVs is going to save you some time. Now, to search raid attacking Pokemon, what I do is I search 3-star and 4 attack, and what this does is going to show me all the 3-star Pokemon I have with 15 attack right here. As you can see, they're all 3 stars and they have that max attack stat. Now, granted, you don't need 15 attack every single time. You just want the highest possible attack stat for any of your raid attacking Pokemon, but as you can see, this is a great way to search it. This also brings up the topic of lucky Pokemon. If you don't know lucky Pokemon, you can get from lucky trades, which are going to be guaranteed with your best friends, or you can get from randomly trading Pokemon, in which Pokemon will randomly go lucky. Sometimes I think there's like a 5% chance, and they will have generally high IVs. Now, the IV floor on lucky Pokemon is 12, 12, 12, meaning the IVs cannot be lower than 12, 12, 12 on lucky Pokemon, which makes it a great way to get raid attacking Pokemon. By doing those lucky trades, you generally will have higher attack. Also, lucky Pokemon are half the amount of stars to power up, which is huge in saving dust. I will say, if you have a lucky Pokemon with like 14 or 13 attack, and then you have a regular Pokemon with 15 attack, I would consider powering up the lucky Pokemon, because being able to save half your amount of Stardust when powering up Pokemon can be huge, and the difference between 1 or 2 IV points versus 250,000 Stardust, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You can power up 2 lucky Pokemon for the price of 1 Pokemon. So consider trying to get luckies for your raid attacking Pokemon. They're just gonna have great IVs. But yeah, generally that is how I search up my raid attacking IVs and what I end up powering up. Again, 15 attack is the main thing you wanna focus on, and then just the other stats generally high. But again, don't be too stingy with it, because as long as you have 15 attack, it is a good raid attacker. I'm gonna put a video up here about the best Pokemon to power up in 2024 if you're curious what Pokemon you should actually be powering up and searching these IVs for. Now we get into the second part, which is going to be PvP IVs. Now, PvP IVs don't work the exact same as raid attacking Pokemon. You actually do not want a perfect IV, a hundo, or whatever. There's actually a different rule, and it's gonna have to do with that attack CP compensation we talked about earlier. Now, in PvP, you actually want low attack, high defense, high stamina. For example, this Venusaur has only 4 attack, 13 defense, 14 HP. And same with all these other PvP Pokemon. As I scroll through, you see they don't really have a lot of attack stats. Well, the reason is because those attack IVs are going to contribute a lot towards the Pokemon CP. So if we were order to keep the attack stat low, we're actually able to power up that Pokemon to a higher level before it reaches that CP cap. You can tell the Pokemon's level by this semicircle. As you can see, the further the semicircle is along, the higher the level this Pokemon is. And we want to get that semicircle as high as we can because the higher level means generally just the higher stats. So that is why we have low attack on our Pokemon. If you want to go more depth on this topic, I will link below a video. Now, I do want to say this rule is not true for Master League, of course, because Master League has no CP cap. So obviously you just want the most power. And then also there are certain Pokemon in PvP that actually max out under certain league caps. Umbreon, for example, in the Ultra League, this is a Hundo level 50 Umbreon, and it only goes up to 2,416 CP. Obviously still available to use in the Ultra League. So sometimes the Pokemon you just actually want the highest possible IVs because they don't even reach the CP cap. But this rule is for Pokemon in the Great League and the Ultra League that go over the CP cap when they're level 50. Now, to search PvP IVs, this is what I like to do. I go 0 to 1 attack and 3 to 4 defense and 3 to 4 HP. What this will do is it'll generally search Pokemon with low attack, high defense, high stamina, all of these Pokemon, for example, showing me potential options. So as you can see, I can go through here, look at all these Pokemon. For example, I've actually even marked some of these for PvP IVs and use those in PvP. There's actually a website called pvpivs.com where you can actually find the specific best IVs because it does get specific. For example, if we go with a Victory Bell in the Great League, a 1 attack, 15 defense, 15 stamina is the best possible IV set. It's going to lead to the highest overall stat product, this number here, which is when you add the attack, defense, and HP stat, just the highest overall stats, the best, bulkiest Pokemon you can get. If you're curious, by the way, why we actually want higher level Pokemon and more bulk and all that stuff and less attack, because in PvP, surviving charge moves is like the most important thing. If you can survive a charge moves, it means you can survive for longer and get more charge moves off and do more damage, which is definitely going to be very, very essential to winning your PvP matches. But yeah, you can come into this thing and search honestly any single Pokemon here, and it'll show you all the best IVs. But again, generally anything low attack, high defense, high stamina works great. Now, I will say there is a rule in Pokemon Go called CMP tie. CMP tie is charge move priority. When two Pokemon throw their charge moves at the same time, the one with the higher attack stat actually gets to throw their charge move first. This can be very important because if you guys are both throwing moves that are going to knock each other out, you both have no shields. Whoever gets to throw that first obviously gets the win, gets the knockout. So the top PvP players will actually sometimes on purpose add a little more attack stat to their PvP Pokemon. I don't know, for example, this Crobat here who has 5 attack, just so that if they're going up against a well PvP IV'd opponent, they can actually win that CMP tie and end up taking that win. This is more of an advanced play, obviously, and you're only really going to see this in the Play Pokemon regionals, but it's generally very seen with very popular Pokemon. For example, I don't know, Annihilate. If Annihilate is very popular in the meta, a lot of people are running Annihilate, you're going to be seeing a lot of Annihilate mirrors, and being able to win that CMP tie might be very, very important to you. So you can consider, you know, weighting yourself a little bit more attack IVs if you want to try to win those CMP ties. Personally, I just go with the best PvP IV, the bulkiest mon, and it does fine for me and it'll do fine for you as well, but that is something to consider. I also will say that using the right Pokemon is much more important than PvP IVs. Don't stress about this stuff too much. A lot of people always tell me like, Dax, you're overstressing, PvP IVs are not that important, and I fully agree. It is much better to have a Lickitung for the Great League than have a rank 1 perfect IV Cherim. I don't know, as an example. Focus on getting the right Pokemon, not on getting the perfect IVs. Don't stress about it too much, but that's generally the IVs I would go with for PvP. And that brings us to the next topic, which a lot of people always ask me questions about, which is Shadow Pokemon. People are always like, Shadow Pokemon, what are the best IVs for Shadow Pokemon? What should I do for Shadow Pokemon? Blah, blah, blah. If you don't know Shadow Pokemon, how they work is they will do 20% more damage, but they'll also take 20% more damage. But this doesn't have to do anything with IVs or stats. This bonus actually gets applied to the attacks of the Pokemon. As you can see, Shadow Ball, for example, here, instead of having a base attack of 100 on Mewtwo, since it's a Shadow Mewtwo, it has a base attack of 120. So it doesn't affect the IVs or CP or anything like that. So you don't have to consider that in your IV equations. And what this means is that we can literally just follow the exact same rules for Shadow Pokemon. For raid attacking Shadow Pokemon, we want generally higher attack, like this Shadow Mewtwo. And then for PvP Shadow Pokemon, like this Meganium, we want generally low attack, high defense, high stamina. So again, same rules apply for Shadow Pokemon. The taking 20% more damage is just going to be that your opponent's charge moves are going to have 20% more damage applied, and then your charge moves will have 20% more damage applied, but it doesn't affect your actual stats. But what I will say, and I think is very important to talk about with Shadow Pokemon, is be lenient. Shadow Pokemon are very hard to get. They're very hard to grind a good IV Shadow Pokemon. In terms of Hundo Shadow Pokemon, I only have 3 of them, which granted, they are great ones like Gardevoir, Entei, and Zubat. But look, I've battled over 4,000 Rocket Grunts, and I only have 3 Hundos, which is actually a pretty good ratio. But nonetheless, be lenient with Shadows. It is very hard to get good IV Shadows. I've gotten a couple decent ones in my day, like this Dragonite and stuff, but I still will power up things that are, you know, less than ideal. Like, look at this Metagross. Not the greatest, right? 12 attack. You're like 12 attack attacks. You're going to power that up. Yes, it's a great Shadow Pokemon. It's a strong Pokemon. And, you know, those extra 3 points of attack are not going to make the biggest difference here. So be lenient with your Shadow Pokemon. Don't be too butthurt about getting the exact perfect IV Hundo, and especially with Shadow Legendaries, because I know how hard it is to get a good IV Shadow Legendary. Like, look at this Mewtwo. Look at this Mewtwo. I power this up to level 40. It has 13 attack, 6 defense, 7 HP. It is a great Mewtwo for raids, but are the IVs the best? No, because I'm a bit lenient with it. The final thing I want to say here in this video, I think is very important, is guys, remember to save your dust and invest in good IVs, and don't power up stuff very, very quickly. I know a lot of trainers who, the second they get a bit of Stardust, just bang, bang, let me power this up, this up, this up, this up. No, plan out what you're going to power up and invest appropriately into the correct things. Go through your storage with all these things I mentioned, look at all these Pokemon, find the ones you want to power up, and then invest in those. It's better to save up and spend big on a big project than spend a little bit on a lot of things, if that makes sense. Like, buying a house is better than buying, you know, 1,000 rulers at the dollar store. I don't know. That's how I was able to get my account, because I saved my dust and I made sure I invested in the correct Pokemon. I could have powered up the first Mewtwo I ever caught that had average IVs, but no, I saved my candy, I saved my stars, and I powered up this Hundo Mewtwo. Now I have a Hundo level 50 Mewtwo. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the one below, you'll enjoy it as well. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comment section below. See you next one. All tips. Peace.